Nathan Cole had retrieved 43 people from the past, and not one of them had ever thanked him. That was the nature of the job. The people he retrieved never knew what had happened to them, never knew that in another timeline, a slightly different version of their life had ended abruptly on a Tuesday afternoon, or in a hospital room, or at the bottom of a flight of stairs. They arrived in the present carrying their memories, their habits, their coffee preferences, and childhood scars, completely unaware that they were replacements. That somewhere in the sealed archives of the Continuity Bureau there was a file with their name on it and a small red notation that read, "Original Deceased." Nathan preferred it that way, clean, efficient, humane in its own strange fashion. He sat now at his desk on the 14th floor of the Bureau's headquarters in Geneva, reviewing the morning's assignment on his terminal. The case was routine. They were almost all routine after 11 years. Subject, David Marsh, age 34, profession, structural architect, cause of original death, vehicular collision, March 14, 2157. Significance rating, high. Marsh's Ilara Tower project, scheduled for completion in 2163, will become the structural template for vertical habitation on the lunar colonies. His early death creates a critical gap in the engineering lineage. Retrieval authorized. Nathan read it twice, the way he always did, then closed the file. He collected his equipment from the locker room, the temporal anchor, the bio-sync injector, the standard-issue gray coat that made him look, in any era, like a man who belonged somewhere else. And he rode the elevator down to sub-level 4. The retrieval chamber smelled like ozone and cold metal, the way it always did. His technician, a young woman named Priya, who still got excited about the physics of it all, ran the calibration sequence while Nathan stood on the platform and checked his anchor settings. 43, she said cheerfully, not looking up from her console. 44, he corrected. Right, 44. That's a career, Nathan. He supposed it was. The light came, the familiar lurch of displacement, and then the cold March air of a Geneva street in 2157 wrapped around him like a held breath. He found the original David Marsh exactly where the file said he would be, face down on the cobblestones of the Rue du Rhône intersection, the delivery vehicle already gone, a small crowd beginning to gather at the edges of the scene. Nathan moved through them with practiced efficiency, badge in hand, his bureau credentials sufficient to hold back the curious and the horrified alike. He administered the body sync, a different injector than the one used for living retrievals, clinical and final. And within 4 minutes, the original David Marsh had been removed from the prime timeline entirely. No body, no evidence, no grief on record. That was standard. The Bureau did not leave evidence, and it did not leave bodies. 17 minutes earlier, in that same street, there had been a living man frowning at a tablet and thinking about load-bearing columns. That man was gone now. The Bureau could not save him, had never tried to. They were not a rescue service, they were a continuity service. The distinction, Nathan had long ago decided, was one he did not think about on the walk back to the anchor point. The replacement came next. The Bureau's Parallel Thread Division had already identified a viable source, an alternate timeline, diverging from the prime at a minor traffic signal malfunction 2 blocks away, in which David Marsh had never reached that intersection. In that thread, Marsh was alive, working, entirely himself. The extraction team brought him forward, sedated him cleanly during transit, and delivered him to a Bureau medical suite in the present. He woke believing he had fainted on Rue du Rhône. His memories were entirely his own, because they were. The Bureau wasn't manufacturing people, it was borrowing them from timelines that, statistically, had plenty to spare. In the thread he had been taken from, there would simply be a man who had inexplicably vanished on a Tuesday. The Bureau's records classified such threads as minor disruptions. Nathan never asked what happened to them after that. The replacement, David Marsh, was briefed, settled, and integrated. He would finish the Ilara Tower. History would hold. Case 44. Closed. The anomaly notice came 3 months later. Nathan was eating lunch alone when his terminal chimed with a priority flag, not a case assignment, but an internal audit notification. He almost ignored it. Audit flags were usually administrative, a retrieval timestamp that didn't reconcile, a biosync log with a missing entry, paperwork dressed up as urgency. But when he opened it, the flag was attached to his own file. He stared at the screen for a long time. Then he read it again. Then he walked very steadily to the office of Director Valeria Owen, and he knocked on the door, and he sat down in the chair across from her desk without being asked, and he said, "Tell me what this means." Director Owen had the kind of face that had learned over decades to give away nothing. She looked at him for a moment that stretched longer than it should have. "We were going to schedule a formal review," she said. "Tell me now." She folded her hands on her desk. "You know the Bureau has always kept parallel verification running on all active field agents, cross-referencing public records, vital statistics, medical logs. It's standard practice. We do it to catch anomalies before they compound. I know what the verification system does. I helped design the protocol." "Yes," she paused. "That's part of why this took so long to surface. Your own familiarity with the system meant your file was not falsified exactly, just organized in a way that made the anomaly easy to overlook." "Organized by whom?" Owen was quiet. "Organized by whom?" he asked again, and his voice was very calm, which was the most frightening thing about it. "By the agent who retrieved you. Nathan, the original file notation is dated 2146. You were 22 years old. There was a malfunction in a test retrieval, a training exercise that went wrong. The original Nathan Cole died in the chamber. His body was processed according to standard protocol." She let that sit for a moment. "You were sourced from a parallel thread the following morning. The agent who ran the operation sealed the file and flagged it for long-term review." The room did not spin. The floor did not drop away. Nathan sat perfectly still and felt the strange, specific sensation of a man watching the ground he thought he was standing on become a reflection in water. "I'm a replacement," he said. "Yes. I've spent 11 years retrieving replacements." His voice was distant now, almost academic. "I argued in that paper I published in 2153 that replacements should never be told, that the continuity of their subjective experience was indistinguishable from the original and therefore morally equivalent." He paused. "I argued for my own ignorance." "Nathan, whose decision was it to not tell me?" Owen looked at her hands. "Yours. The agent who retrieved you, the Nathan Cole from the parallel thread you were drawn from, wrote a sealed recommendation. He said you would be more effective, more committed to the work if you believed you had always been yourself." And a long pause. "He was right. You have been." Nathan said nothing for a long time. Outside, the city moved in its ordinary way, trams and pedestrians, and the gray surface of the lake catching the afternoon light, completely indifferent to the fact that the man watching it through the 14th floor window had just ceased, in some fundamental sense, to know who he was. "There's something else," Owen said quietly. He turned. "The verification flag wasn't triggered by historical records. It was triggered by a prospective anomaly. The system cross-referenced your biometrics against projected incident data." She slid a single printed page across her desk. The Bureau still used paper for certain things, an old habit from the days when they worried about digital records being altered. Nathan picked it up. It was a Bureau incident projection,
The same format he had read 44 times, always with someone else's name at the top. The layout was familiar down to the font: subject name, date, cause, significance rating. His eyes moved across it with the practiced efficiency of a man who had spent 11 years reading other people's endings. His name was at the top. The cause read structural failure, sub-level retrieval chamber. The date was today's. The significance rating was high, which meant the Bureau had already determined that his work was not yet finished, that history still needed him, or needed someone who could do what he did, which was not quite the same as history needing him, but close enough for the Bureau's purposes. He understood immediately what was being asked of him.
There was no confusion, no slow dawning horror. He had designed this process. He knew every step. Tonight, in Sub-Level 4, Nathan Cole would die. The Bureau would retrieve his body before anyone found it. They would source a replacement from a parallel thread, a Nathan who had left the building an hour early today, who had gone home and made dinner and gone to bed and woken up tomorrow. And that Nathan would be brought forward, sedated, settled, and integrated. He would wake in a medical suite believing nothing more alarming than that he had felt faint in the elevator. His memories would be entirely his own, because they were, and he would never be told. Nathan set the paper down. He was aware of a very specific feeling, not grief, not rage, but something quieter and more corrosive, the recognition that the argument he had made 100 times in reports and ethics reviews and the paper he was quietly proud of had always been true. Continuity of experience was morally equivalent to continuity of identity. The replacement would be him in every way that mattered. It was just that the original was still gone. It was always the original that was gone. "We need a retrieval," On said. "There's a parallel thread where you leave the building an hour early today, and the incident doesn't affect you. We've already identified the extraction point." She folded her hands again. "I'm authorized to send an agent." "Who would you send?" he asked. On met his eyes. "We were hoping you would go." Nathan Cole, or the man who had always believed he was Nathan Cole, which he had come to understand was the same thing, stood up from the chair, straightened his jacket, and picked up the paper. "I'll need a retrieval kit," he said, "already prepared." He walked to the door, and then he stopped. "The man you retrieved tonight," he said without turning around, "don't tell him." He heard On exhale slowly. "He'll be more effective if he believes he's always been himself." He left the office, rode the elevator down to Sub-Level 4, and went to do what he was good at.